Welcome to Los Angeles Data Platform User Group. Thank you for being with us today. Good time of the day, everyone, whenever you are. Please drop your city or country into the chat so we know which communities we are serving. Again, welcome to Los Angeles Data Platform User Group. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Steve, and I'll be moderator of this virtual meeting. I'll be joined by Ilana. Feel free to visit our Eventbrite or Mira pages. This way you can get notified on any upcoming meetings. We're meeting every third Wednesday of every month. All the meetings are virtual, so you can join from wherever you are. If you're attending us for the first time or want to see us on social media, here's all the links that you can chase us on the social media. Most of our recordings are going to YouTube and Rumble, so you can see and so you can basically revisit the content. So you can revisit the content that you saw, or maybe refresh it again. Also, you can join our mailing list. You can either scan that QR code or click on the link. And this way you get notified on upcoming meetings, on new published videos, as well as our weekly newsletter as well, with some helpful information. And this event is actually, okay. We have upcoming SQL Server events in SoCal. The dates are still tentative. There is Orange County, it's April 27th. And again, it's tentative, but the date is April 27th, and the location is Microsoft Office in Irvine. Also tentative SQL Server in Los Angeles on June 1st at Loyola Marymount University. And this event is sponsored by Microsoft Team3 and Data-Driven Technologies. So everyone knows Microsoft. Team3 is virtualized storage. Now, Data-Driven Technologies, or as we call it shortly, DDT, is a nonprofit that funds this user group, as well as SQL Server in Los Angeles and SQL Server. During this presentation, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. You can also actually, we'll see if we not gonna have too many people, maybe we'll just unmute. Without further ado, let's move to the rockstar of today's online meeting. Chris, please take it away and introduce yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Christopher Wolff. I am a SQL Server Solutions Architect at Rubrik currently. And today I just want to talk to you guys about data compliance for your databases. Let me just go ahead and share my screen real quick. And I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So today, subject is a little near and dear to me from my last job. I used to be a data reliability engineer at a company called Xero, and their main thing was accounting information, things like that. We had a ton of customers who were in the EU, so of course we had to deal with GDPR constantly. So because of that, we had a lot of information about our data, but didn't know exactly where our data was. So we had to do a lot of scraping the data, figuring out where it was, and then coming up with a good way to delete the data if a customer asked to be, forgotten. And I'll get into that more in the presentation, but these are the kinds of things you have to worry about if you're going to deal with certain companies and more states in the United States as well. We'll start doing this. Of course, California has one, Colorado has one as well. And then I saw New York and New Jersey have got ones going on the books, and I think another 20 states past that are in the lineup. So this is going to become more common as time goes on. So give you a quick bio. Like I said, my name is Christopher Wolff. I've been working with databases since SQL 2000, and that's a really long time to work with databases. My Twitter handle is @TikiTong. If you, I'm on there occasionally, but not so much. You can contact me through email. I have a blog, but it's mostly older stuff. And then if you want to look at any of my past contributions or anything like that, you can look at my GitHub repo. All the past presentations I've done around there, mostly around SQL Server, but then I also have ones around GitHub and things like that. And then, like I said, I'm a SQL Server Solutions site. Rubrik. Rubrik is a backup vendor. So I'll do a little plug for them at the end, but that's not what we're here for. So, and I'm Microsoft and AWS certified, if that matters to you. So the objectives we want to tackle in this talk today are, first, we want to define what data compliance is, because it's not always simple, straight and narrow. Sometimes it can be different depending on what you're talking about. And then we're going to talk about the overview of the legal issues and the specific laws we're talking about when we talk about data compliance. And then we're going to talk about how we classify data through different types of methods. And then we'll talk about removing data, or maybe not. And I'll give you a little bit more specifics when we get to that point. So when we talk about data compliance, what we're really talking about is data retention. And this is defined by policies of persistent data and records management to keep, to make sure you're keeping meeting legal and business data archival requirements. And that could be through a law, or it could be just within your company. It doesn't necessarily have to be a law you're complying to. It could be maybe you've got auditors and you're worried about, an SEC filing because you're a public company or something like that. It's definitely something that could come up as well. So it's a balancing act between those two, and also it's a balancing act between economic needs of the company itself. So there's a lot of give and take when it comes to that sense of things. And then different meanings depending on the different industries, because like I said, the last company I worked for was an accounting company. We definitely had to have very stringent things on those kinds of settings, but then that may not be important to maybe a construction company or something like that, where they really don't have that kind of relationship with their customers. So legal issues, this is a regulatory compliance we're talking about when we're going through this here. These are laws, policies, and regulations that data compliance falls under. It can vary widely depending on the region of the world and an entity does business in, basically. So accrediting organizations who are out there to help you navigate through these regulatory items. So if you don't know what you don't have a legal department, maybe you're a smaller company or something like that, you definitely could hire a third-party company and they can walk you through that. But most bigger corporations will have a whole legal department, and you can reference them. I had to talk to the legal people all the time to say, okay, does this really matter for us, or do we want to worry about this section over here? And that's where we got most of our guidance, is our internal legal departments. So the laws, there's a whole host of laws around the world. The main one I'm going to be focusing on is the one that pretty much is a template for everything, is the EU General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. This is laws, in their own wording, it lays down rules relating to protection of natural person with regards to the processing of personal data, and rules relating to the free movement of said data. So whether you can move it to a different company, or you could sell it to a different company, or you could, keep it internally, or you have to delete it, those kinds of things. This specific law only applies to the citizens of EU and member states. So keep that in mind. But many other laws encompass this, are doing the same things, like the California Consumer Privacy Act. So they're pretty similar. There's one-offs here and there. Once again, check with your legal department, and they should be able to tell you the differences to make sure you're complying specific to that law. One thing to also consider, when we're talking about the citizens of EU, That does not necessarily mean that you are exempt from it because we're in the United States. You have to abide by this law even if they live in a different country. So if you're servicing their data, like for example Facebook, they have to abide by this law because they have people in the EU who are interfacing with their website. So it's one of those things where you have to do it no matter where you live, wherever the person lives as well. So keep that in mind. So 3 main points of GDPR that you have to consider is consent, data minimization, and individual rights. So with consent, that little pop-up that comes every time you go to a website, that's where the consent comes in. It asks you, hey, I want to take your data a little bit. Is it okay if I do that? And you say, I agree. That's getting that consent. And then data minimization, only keeping the data that has to do with a well-defined business objective. If you don't know what that is, you can go onto the company's website and the company will specifically spell it out. And when you click that I agree, there should be a little blob below the I agree that says, these are the specific things we're pulling your data for. And they have to spell those out. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do work, in those specific regions. And then individual rights. This, gives clear rights to understand why their data is being collected and processed. Maybe for advertising sakes. They want to know who's visiting their website, so that way they could pop up those video ads that you see all the time. I know we hate them, but that's the way the world works, unfortunately. So classifications of data, most regulations cover what is called personal identifying information. And this represents any form of information that, can identify a specific person. And that could be many different things. I'll show that in the next slide here, but it applies to, but this also doesn't necessarily apply to customers. It can also apply to internal employees as well. So, if you've got that internal data, that's information that may have to be deleted one day too if they're no longer with the company. So keep that in mind. And some examples here, real easy stuff is like name, government ID if you have a tax ID in a different country, or a social security number in the United States, a phone number, email address, but also stuff like location data. That could be their address, but it also could be their Google Maps info. So if they, if you click on a Google link to, maybe get the map ID within your website, that you're collecting that Google Map info as well. So, and also like latitude, longitude as well. And then, if they have a website URL, you saw my blog post and my Facebook and my LinkedIn, that's all my personal identifier information. That's a way to get back to a specific person. Let's put it that way. So when it comes to actually removing data, what do you actually look for? You're going to identify where those personal identifying information exists in your database. And this will be when, there's a part of the law in GDPR where you could say, remove me from your website, forget me. And that's what this comes down to, is you have to remove those people. That's what we were responding to at the last company, was getting to those specific locations and saying, okay, Fred Schwartz in Germany, he would like to be removed. So let's go ahead and take him out to everywhere inside of our specific data location. So, sorry, give me a second here. So good candidates are usually customer employee tables. That's the most of the time. Order information can also hold like location data or email information that, once again, could get back to a specific person. You have to get those out as well. And then data outside the database. Maybe you've got, object storage services like an S3 or object storage in Azure. You have to make sure that you get back to those specific locations. Maybe you've got some, maybe pictures that the person used, or maybe they've got receipts. In the case of my last company, where it was a small business accounting platform. And then, whatever personal documents you get back to them specifically, you've got to remove those as well. Automating that is a little bit little heftier a task, but it does make your life a lot easier. We had to make, there's no way we could go in here individually and go to each one. We would go through them through a, we would go through them through a repeatable process through a PowerShell script, and it would remove it to the specific databases we were looking for. So that's what we kind of did. You could also run some kind of API that runs through all these locations, and it can be called by maybe a customer ID. That's usually the easiest way. We had specific ID numbers for a company. We could run it through there and remove them out of there as well. So, or not. There are specific points where you don't have to remove the data. So backups is one of them. Every time somebody asks you to remove them from your database, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to every backup through time and go find them. Most regulators have given backups a pass in this case, and they're satisfied with backup data being considered what's called beyond use. There's a whole section inside the law called beyond use, which means it's not reasonable for a company to go back and delete them for all of time through all the backups that they may or may not ever recover from. So keep that in mind. That's good to know. And then, if you're breaking a schema, if by removing, an ID the user exists, that alters, you can just alter the string data instead. So keep that in mind. We had to do that because we couldn't delete whole lines of data. It would break everything inside of it. So let's say maybe a business had two partners, and one of the partners wanted to be removed, but the other partner was still running the business. So we couldn't remove all those because of that. What we just did is we changed the name on the specific ID to user request delete. So it was easier to go that route rather than having to push the whole thing together. So real quickly, this is a list of laws around the world. Is a really good breakdown of that. GDPR laws in full. You could, if you ever want to have maybe a good night's sleep, this is a good way to start. It is very wordy, very, very in depth about what they're doing. If you're looking for PII definitions by the U.S. Department of Labor, this is a good one, but they may have different identifications in different countries, so keep that in mind. And then information about backups. This talks specifically about why you don't have to delete your backups, things like that. And then related topics from Wikipedia, about regulatory compliance and data retention. Those are specific to the things I was talking about. So, and then if you want to know more, I do have a blog about this, goes in way more in detail, but pretty much covers the same topics. So that being said, if you are looking for somebody to help you with that, we have Rubrik, my company I work for now, has a sensitive data discovery tool. What we'll do is we'll go inside of your data, including databases, look for specific data that you have, and we'll say, okay, this is PII information, this is HIPAA, this is things like that, and then we'll give you ideas of what kind of data you have inside. So that way, if you want to delete that, you would know up front. You wouldn't have to do all the manual work I did in my last company. So it's a good tool to have if you ever need it. So, and that's it for me. Any questions? Let me look in the chat here real quick. So,
since I'm not muted, you mind if I go ahead and ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when you say delete, are we talking about is there a hard delete versus soft delete requirement? If I were to try and kind of keep the data integrity and everything else, and for example went with a soft delete, or do we need to specifically remove the customer name from the database entirely?
Yeah, and that's where I was getting into that point about, this breaking schemas here. I'll go back to this slide here. You still have to remove any information about that customer, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to delete that line of data. You could just change it to, like I said, user request delete or something like that. And that
So
way,
you actually literally have to remove the name. So like I can't just have a
Yep.
delete flag to keep it from showing up in queries or searches or, notifications, but like actually have to remove the client information.
Correct.
Okay.
If they requested that they be forgotten, you have to honor that request and actually literally make them forgotten, basically.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions you guys have? All right, Steve, that's all I got. Over to
Should I
you.
just unmute everyone?
Yeah, if anybody, unmute everybody if they have any questions. So.
Is there any law that specifies the amount of days that it should take you to remove any API data?
The reasonable request is within 30 days. That's a good point to put on here, maybe to add to here. So you have within 30 days to remove all data off the database.
And does the customer
as far as GDPR goes, sorry.
Does the customer needs also to receive some sort of confirmation that we no longer have your information?
I don't think so, but we always did. We always let them know that we had completed the removal. So
Got it.
If you don't have requests to remove data, can you keep it forever?
yeah, if nobody's requested it, this is if a specific customer from the EU says to you, remove me from your website. This is only in that case, basically. So if they don't ever say that, then you can keep it however long you like. So and I think the same thing applies for California too. So any other questions?
No questions. Thank you. It was very informative.
Yeah. It's a really important topic, so a lot of people don't consider it. So
If you were to put dollar amount, how much you think there's a cost behind it? So company that has no processes for that, how much it's going to cost them to have this process?
Oh, to set it up?
Yeah.
I mean, depends on if they have competent DBAs, is what I would say on that one. If they've got some good, data processors that know their databases well, know the schema pretty well, you could do this in less than a week. But if you don't, and it's just a bunch of maybe developers who don't understand the schema that well, that might take a while, is what I would say. Probably like maybe a month or so.
And request to remove is going to include any third-party tools as well. So let's say if the accounting company that you work for, let's say they're using MailChimp, and they feeding MailChimp with emails, and a customer request to remove, basically not only you need to remove it from your database, but from third-party databases as well.
Correct. That would be correct. Well, to a certain point. If it's like a third-party partner you're working with, and the customer works with you and a partner, they would have to request it at the partner level itself. But yes, if you're using tools from outside your company, then yes, you have to remove it from those tools as well.
Got it. And obviously you want to create tools that are repeatable, so you don't do it manually every time.
Exactly. Like we were doing this manual to start with, and I was like, this is insane. So I just made my own PowerShell scripts at that point.
So how does one request a delete or a request to be removed? How do they go about that within the GDPR?
So we ourselves, we had a form you could fill out on the web page itself, but the way the laws spell it out is either you could send them an email, or you could send them a letter, and then that would start as soon as they received it. That would start the clock. Let's put it that way. So it all depends on. Most companies have it kind of set up. If they're in Europe, they already have that set up as part of it. But if you're maybe a new company and you don't know that, it may be something you have to address at a different time. So.
Obviously, the data needs to be removed from any transactional database and from any reporting database as well, right? Any place.
Correct. Yeah. If you're let's say you're doing it in a data warehouse, we had to send it over to the data warehouse people, and they had to remove it from the data warehouse as well.
What about shopping history? In case of this is basically transactional data.
That's the thing. Like we had that information, but because we were cutting off the source to the transactional data, and they could no longer relate that, it was like they weren't there anyways. So as long as you could show that you've cut off and there's no way to get back to that original one, the record that identifies them, then you're okay. And that's basically what we did is we were cutting off the source to other microservices across the company. Let's put it that way, because everything in our stuff was a microservice where you've got the accounting platform, and then you've got the billing platform, and then you've got a payroll platform, things like that. And they all could interact on the specific customer ID. But as soon as you cut off the connection between all those microservices, the data could still stay there, but it had no way to identify the person. Let's put it that way.
So you're basically renaming the record to some bogus name, because otherwise, like if you were to try and run reports where you're just getting counts, you can't really, like your reports won't work properly. So you retain the original, and like if you had a foreign key constraint, so none of that would work. So you can't delete the customer. You're just renaming customer to bogus customer one, or I don't know, ghost.
Exactly.
So that's essentially your soft delete, and the change name is user request delete.
Exactly, or something, whatever you want to call it, basically. So just as long as it's
removing
there's
any
no way
identifying information.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, as long as there's nothing to identify that person back to the original records, that's all that matters. So, and you can be creative with that. That's the thing. Like it doesn't necessarily mean I have to delete 50 million lines of data. I just have to be able to say, okay, this one record has an ID number that connects here. As long as I cut the connection and there's no way to get back to it, then that's all that matters. So,
you have the source code for your PowerShell script?
I wish I did. I do not anymore, unfortunately. Well, it was specific to the way our schema worked within our company. So it really wouldn't work for anything else. So, because it's like, go to this table, do this. Go to that table, do this.
Very custom. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Does DBA tools has anything like that by any chance?
I don't think so. I know that there's a data classification tool built into like Idera's tools, and also like I think SolarWinds has something like that as well. And like I said, Rubik's got something as well. So
Got it.
How does the backup side of thing works? Is this not something that can be restored and the PI, whatever that will come back, or guess
yeah,
how are
like
you
I
gonna
said,
isolate?
yeah, like I said, they kind of give you a pass on that. That most companies will never restore back all that information. They'll just restore specific data sets, and that's all they really care about. And there's a whole path. The regulators give you a whole pass on that, to where you don't have to worry about that. So.
Any more questions?
Well, cool. If anybody has any other questions, you guys have my email. Feel free to let me know.
Actually, if you can go back to the slide with your contacts.
Yeah. So feel free to let me know if you got any other questions. Like I said, I haven't done this topic in probably 2 years, but I still remember most of it. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for allowing me to talk about it.